The city never slept, especially not when the skyline glittered with money. From the rooftop of the Altair Hotel, laughter and music spilled into the night. Crystal chandeliers shimmered, and the guests, all sleek suits and evening gowns, clinked glasses filled with champagne worth more than most people's monthly salaries. At the center of it all was Ethan Cole, 32, billionaire, CEO of a top tech firm. Handsome, confident, and utterly untouchable. The kind of man who turned every room into his stage. He leaned against the balcony, tie loosened, that signature smirk playing at his lips. Across from him, his friends Marcus and Logan laughed loudly, their jokes dripping with the kind of arrogance that came from knowing the world bent to their wealth. "Another headline about you, Ethan," Marcus teased, waving his phone. "The most eligible bachelor of the year." "How many is that now?" Ethan chuckled. 5 years in a row, I think. I'd call that consistency. Logan poured another drink. Consistency or commitment issues? That got a laugh from the group. The music swelled behind them, smooth jazz, the kind played in places where people pretended not to be lonely. "Come on," Marcus pressed. "Don't you ever think of settling down?" Ethan shrugged, eyes scanning the city below. Why ruin perfection with paperwork? The men laughed again, but Marcus wasn't done. He leaned forward, smirking. "Admit it, Ethan. You're afraid. You only date models and socialites because you're scared to see what love looks like when it's not wrapped in luxury." Ethan's smile faded just a little. "Don't start with that philosophical nonsense, Marcus. We all know how the world works. People marry for looks or status, that's it. Strip those away, and love disappears." Logan raised his glass. "To that, the truth no one wants to admit." Glasses clinked. The night air grew warmer, and pride swelled in Ethan's chest. He liked being right. He liked proving he was above the illusions that ruled ordinary people. Marcus, however, wasn't impressed. "You sound like a man who's never been tested," he said with a grin. "So how about a little challenge?" Ethan turned toward him, one brow raised. "I'm listening." Marcus leaned back in his chair, speaking slowly, enjoying every word. "Find a woman, not a model, not a socialite, someone ordinary. No beauty filters, no fancy background. Marry her. Stay married for 6 months. If you can do that, I'll admit you're right about love." Logan laughed, almost choking on his drink. "That's insane. Ethan wouldn't last a week." The corner of Marcus's mouth lifted. "I'm serious. Let's make it interesting. If you fail, you donate $10 million to charity. If you succeed, I'll hand you my shares in the company's next venture. Deal?" For a moment, silence. Then Ethan's smirk returned, slow and deliberate. The kind of smile that said challenge accepted. "You really think I can't do it?" he asked softly. Marcus shrugged. "I think you've never cared enough to try." Ethan stood, straightening his jacket. "Then watch me." The crowd behind them erupted in cheers as a new song played. A firework burst over the skyline, painting the night in gold. It reflected in Ethan's eyes, pride and arrogance mixing like flame and fuel. "You'll marry someone, ordinary?" Logan scoffed. "Not just ordinary," Marcus added. "Someone the world would never expect a man like you to love." Ethan raised his glass. "Then I'll find her, and I'll prove you both wrong." He downed the champagne in one smooth motion. The bet was sealed. As laughter resumed and the music grew louder, none of them noticed the brief flicker of doubt that crossed Ethan's expression. Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe, just for a second, the word love felt heavier than he expected. But he brushed it off. He didn't believe in love. He believed in control, in winning, in keeping emotions at arm's length. As he looked out over the glowing city, he whispered to himself. 6 months. How hard could it be? The night wind carried his words away, the careless promise of a man who didn't yet know that the bet he'd made for fun would soon change everything he believed about beauty, pride, and love. The following morning, Ethan Cole sat in the back seat of his black luxury sedan, scrolling through his phone as the city blurred past. He had forgotten most of last night, except for one thing, the bet. He smirked as he reread Marcus's message. "Don't chicken out, lover boy. 6 months start when you say, I do." Ethan typed back, "Start counting. I'll find her." He sent it with a grin. To him, it was still a game, a performance he knew he could win. The car stopped in front of a small cafe tucked between a flower shop and a bookstore. "Your 10 a.m. meeting was rescheduled, sir," his assistant said nervously. Ethan sighed. "Fine. I'll grab a coffee." He stepped inside, instantly irritated by how ordinary the place was, pastel walls, handwritten menu boards, and a smell of fresh bread that clung to the air like comfort. The cafe was busy, filled with chatter and laughter, none of it forced. Behind the counter, a woman hummed softly as she worked. Grace Dawson. Late 20s, with kind eyes and a warm smile that made people feel seen. She was plump, dressed simply in a light blue apron dusted with flour, and wore her hair tied back in a messy bun. She moved gracefully, though her hands were tired from long hours. Ethan barely noticed her, until she turned, holding a tray of coffee cups. They collided. Hot coffee spilled down his designer suit. Gasps rippled through the cafe. Grace froze, her face pale. "Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry." She grabbed napkins, trying to help, but Ethan stepped back sharply. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" he snapped. Her voice trembled. I didn't see you." "Clearly," he cut her off. "You should be more careful." Customers watched in silence. Grace's eyes glistened, but she didn't argue. She handed him more napkins and said softly, "Please, let me pay for the cleaning." Ethan scoffed. "I think I'll survive." He turned to leave. Then her voice stopped him, gentle, not defensive. "I really am sorry, sir. I didn't mean to ruin your morning. If it helps, I can offer you another coffee. On the house." He turned slightly, surprised. Her sincerity wasn't laced with fear or flattery, just genuine kindness. Most people either apologized nervously or tried to impress him. She did neither. Ethan hesitated, then muttered, "Fine. Make it black." As she prepared the coffee, she hummed again, a soft tune, cheerful and completely unaffected by his attitude. He watched her. Something about her composure irritated him, or maybe it intrigued him. When she handed him the cup, she smiled politely. "Here you go. Be careful this time," she said lightly. Ethan blinked. Was that humor? He left without replying, but her calm voice echoed in his mind the entire drive home. That night, Ethan sat at his penthouse bar, replaying the moment in his head. Grace's voice. Her steadiness. Her lack of pretense. Marcus's words drifted back. "Find someone the world would never expect you to love." He smirked to himself. "Maybe I already have." The next morning, he returned to the cafe. And the day after that. And the one after that. Grace started recognizing him, the coffee spill guy, she joked once, smiling as she served him. Each day, he stayed a little longer, asking questions. She told him she had studied culinary arts before her mother got sick. That she worked extra hours to pay medical bills and still volunteered at a local shelter. Ethan pretended to listen, but somewhere between her laughter and her stories, he found himself forgetting that this started as a bet. One rainy afternoon, she brought him a slice of cake she had made herself. "On the house again?" he teased. "No," she replied with a grin. "Consider it a peace offering." He took a bite. It was simple but perfect, just like her. Something shifted inside him. He couldn't name it. Maybe guilt. Maybe curiosity. "Grace," he asked quietly, "do you really believe in love?" She looked surprised but thoughtful. "Of course. Not the kind in movies. Real love, where you choose to care, even when it's not easy." Ethan studied her. "That sounds like hard work." She smiled faintly. "The best things always are." He didn't know why, but her words stayed with him long after he left. Later that evening, Marcus called. "Any progress, Romeo?" Ethan chuckled. "I think I found her." "Already?" "Yeah. Sweet, ordinary, and absolutely nothing like me." Marcus laughed. "Perfect. Just remember, this is business. Not a fairy tale." Ethan's grin faded slightly as he hung up. He looked at his reflection in the glass wall, the confident billionaire who could buy anything. But for the first time, he wondered what couldn't be bought. As the rain streaked down the windows, his phone buzzed again, Grace's cafe promotion popping up on his feed. "Every cup made with love." He smiled faintly. "Let's see if love can be bought," he murmured, picking up his keys. Tomorrow, he would ask her out. Not because he cared. Not yet. But because the bet had just begun. It had been 3 weeks since Ethan Cole first walked into Grace Dawson's cafe. What began as a joke, a cruel little bet whispered over champagne, had somehow become part of his daily life. He told himself he was still in control. He was just playing his part, getting closer, setting the stage. But each morning, as he watched Grace's warm smile greet strangers and her laughter fill the room, something in him started to shift, so quietly he almost didn't notice. One evening, the cafe was closing. Grace wiped the counters while Ethan lingered by the window, pretending to finish his coffee. The sun dipped low, painting gold streaks across her face. "You really like this place," she said softly, breaking the silence. Ethan looked up, feigning surprise. "It's quiet. Peaceful. People here smile without a reason." Grace chuckled. "That's because we can't afford not to." He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "When life isn't easy, you learn to find happiness in small things. A good cup of coffee, a kind word, a sunrise." Her words caught him off guard. He was used to people talking about profit margins and luxury cars, not sunrises. "You talk like you've lived 100 lives," he said, half joking. Grace smiled faintly. "Maybe I just pay attention to mine." For the first time, Ethan didn't have a clever reply. He just watched her, the way she moved, the way she listened. He felt something unfamiliar, quiet admiration. That night, he sat in his penthouse, staring at his phone. Marcus's message blinked again. "Don't forget, you've got 30 days. You're on week 3. He exhaled slowly. He had almost forgotten. Almost. The next morning, he arrived early, before the cafe opened. Grace was unlocking the door, startled to see him waiting. "You're early," she laughed. "Craving coffee this bad?" "Actually," Ethan paused, slipping his hands into his pockets. "I was hoping to ask you something." Her brows lifted, curious. He took a deep breath, rehearsed charm sliding easily into place. "Have dinner with me tonight." Grace blinked. "Dinner? Like, a date?" "Why not?" he smiled. "You make great coffee, maybe your taste in food is just as good." She laughed nervously. "Ethan, you don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted gently. "No business talk. Just two people sharing a meal." Her instinct was to say no, men like him didn't ask out women like her. But his eyes held something sincere, or at least she thought they did. After a long pause, she nodded. "Okay. Dinner." Their first date was nothing like Grace expected. He didn't take her to a fancy rooftop restaurant. Instead, he chose a quiet diner by the river, where nobody cared about status or headlines. She laughed more than she had in months. Ethan listened, or at least tried to. When she talked about her mother's illness, her dream to open a bakery that helped single mothers, her belief that people were good at their core, Ethan found himself strangely moved. But later that night, when Marcus called, his voice brought Ethan crashing back to reality. "So? Making progress?" Ethan's tone hardened. "Yeah. She's perfect." Marcus chuckled. "Then seal the deal." The clock's ticking. Ethan hung up, his stomach twisting slightly, a feeling he couldn't name. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Grace spent more time together. Morning coffees turned into late-night phone calls. She showed him how to bake cinnamon rolls, he showed her the city skyline from his private terrace. She began to fall, deeply, innocently, hopelessly. One evening, as rain pattered softly against her window, Ethan knelt before her. He held out a velvet box, elegant, simple, calculated. Grace gasped. "Ethan, what are you doing?" "I'm doing something I never thought I would," he said smoothly. "I don't care what people think. I just know I don't want to lose you." Tears welled in her eyes. She wanted to believe him, every word. And she did. "Yes," she whispered. Ethan smiled and slipped the ring onto her finger. Cameras flashed secretly in the shadows. Marcus had hired paparazzi to make the story viral, the billionaire and the baker. But Grace didn't know. All she saw was love. All he saw, or so he thought, was victory. That night, as she fell asleep beside him, her head on his chest, Ethan stared at the ceiling, heart uneasy. He had everything he wanted. The bet was almost won. So why did it feel like he'd just lost something far greater? The wedding was small but elegant, white roses, candlelight, soft piano music. Grace's hands trembled as she held the bouquet, eyes shimmering with tears of disbelief. She couldn't understand how a man like Ethan Cole could want someone like her. When he looked at her and said, "I do," her heart fluttered like a child's dream finally coming true. But Ethan's smile, charming as ever, didn't quite reach his eyes. From the back row, Marcus and Logan exchanged a smirk. They raised their glasses silently, sealing the bet with cruel amusement. 6 months, Marcus whispered. "Let's see how long the fairy tale lasts." The honeymoon lasted only 3 days. Grace imagined long walks, laughter, late-night talks, but Ethan was distant. Cold. Always on his phone, checking emails, taking calls that never seemed urgent. She tried to be patient. "You must be tired from work," she'd say softly. "You wouldn't understand," he'd reply, eyes still on the screen. By the second week, Grace had stopped expecting affection. She focused on little things instead, making his favorite breakfast, leaving notes on his desk, decorating their penthouse with plants to make it feel like home. But no matter how warm she tried to make their world, Ethan's side of the bed always felt cold. One evening, she waited up for him. The clock struck midnight. The city lights flickered through the windows as she sat curled up on the couch, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. When Ethan finally came in, smelling faintly of whiskey, she smiled weakly. "You're late again. Everything okay at work?" He loosened his tie, barely looking at her. "It's fine. I made dinner. It's still warm." He waved a hand dismissively. "I already ate with clients." Grace's smile faltered. The silence between them stretched, heavy, awkward, unkind. She tried again. Maybe this weekend we could. Grace, please, he snapped suddenly. I've had a long day. Can we not do this right now? Her lips parted, but she said nothing. He disappeared into the bedroom, leaving her alone in the quiet echo of her own disappointment. The next morning, Grace walked into his office to bring him coffee, something she did every day. Through the slightly open door, she froze. Ethan's voice was low, amused. No, Marcus, I'm not backing out. She's sweet, naive, perfect for the image. A pause, then laughter. 6 months, and it's done. I'll make sure she doesn't suspect a thing. Grace's world stopped. Her hand trembled. The coffee spilled silently onto the carpet, unnoticed. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought the whole world could hear it. She stepped back quietly and left the office before he saw her. Her breath came in small, painful gasps as she walked into the street, the words replaying in her head like knives. She's perfect for the image, 6 months, and it's done. That night, she didn't confront him. Instead, she sat on their balcony, watching the city lights blur through her tears. How could something that felt so real to her be a lie to him? She had given him everything, her trust, her heart, her quiet faith that maybe love didn't care about appearance or money. But Ethan had only given her pretense. Still, she couldn't bring herself to hate him. Because beneath the arrogance, she had seen glimpses, small, fragile moments, where he looked lost, not cruel. She whispered into the night. Why do you have to pretend, Ethan? What are you so afraid of? No answer came. Only the sound of wind against glass and the faint echo of a man who didn't yet know the value of what he was breaking. Days passed. Grace stopped leaving notes. She stopped waiting for him to come home. Instead, she began volunteering again, at the same shelter she'd worked at before. There, surrounded by laughter and children, she found pieces of herself that Ethan's silence had buried. And slowly, Ethan began to notice the difference. The woman who once smiled every morning now barely looked at him. Her laughter no longer filled the house. Her eyes, once full of trust, had grown distant, almost guarded. One evening, as he watched her from across the dining table, a strange pang hit his chest. She looked peaceful. Peaceful without him. For the first time, Ethan felt something unfamiliar, guilt. That night, as Grace slept beside him, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. The words Marcus had said months ago echoed like a curse. You'll never know real love because you don't believe in it. He turned his head, watching Grace breathe softly in her sleep. For the first time, he wondered if maybe Marcus had been right. The bet that once felt like a game now tasted like ashes. And deep down, though he didn't admit it yet, Ethan Cole was beginning to lose. The storm didn't start with thunder. It began quietly, with a single news alert flashing across Ethan's phone. Breaking, Coltech faces major data breach, thousands of users' information leaked. At first, Ethan thought it was a joke. He refreshed the page, but the headlines multiplied. Emails flooded in, investors, lawyers, journalists, all demanding answers. By noon, his company's stock had fallen 18%. By sunset, it was chaos. The same men who had laughed with him on rooftop parties were now whispering behind his back. Board members stopped returning his calls. And Marcus, his closest friend, was suddenly nowhere to be found. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt powerless. He sat in his glass-walled office, staring blankly at the city below. The world that once seemed to bow before him was now watching him crumble, headlines flashing, cameras waiting, vultures circling. Grace entered quietly, holding a tray with coffee and a sandwich. She'd seen the news. Everyone had. You need to eat, she said gently. He didn't look up. I'm not hungry. She set the tray down anyway. You've been in here all day. Your team needs you. He scoffed bitterly. My team's too busy blaming me to need me. Grace didn't argue. She simply walked closer, her calm presence filling the silence he couldn't stand. Ethan, she said softly, mistakes happen. What matters now is how you fix them. He turned sharply. You think this is just a mistake? I built this company from nothing. And in 1 week, it's ruined. Her voice stayed gentle. Then build again. You've done it once. You don't understand, he snapped. You've never built anything in your life. The words hit harder than he intended. Grace froze. For a moment, she just looked at him, really looked at him. The man she thought she knew, stripped bare by his own pride. Then, quietly, she said, maybe not buildings or companies, but I build people, Ethan. I help them believe again. I build homes, hearts, hope, the things money can't buy. Her words sank into the room like light-piercing darkness. Ethan said nothing. Grace placed her hand on the desk. You don't have to do this alone. Let someone care for you, just once. And before he could respond, she walked out, leaving behind the faint scent of coffee and the echo of truth. That night, Ethan sat alone in the dark office, her words replaying again and again. He picked up the sandwich she'd left, cold now, and took a slow bite. It was ridiculous, but somehow it made him feel human. For the first time, he admitted to himself how tired he was, not just of work, but of pretending to be invincible. The days that followed were brutal. Reporters camped outside his building. Clients pulled contracts. The company bled money. Marcus finally called, his tone flat. "Sorry, Ethan. Can't be tied to this mess. I'm pulling my investment." Ethan clenched his jaw. "You leaked it, didn't you?" Marcus laughed softly. "Business is business. You taught me that." The call ended. And with it, the last illusion of friendship vanished. At home, Grace found him sitting on the balcony in silence, the glow of the city lights reflecting in his tired eyes. He didn't look up when she approached, just said quietly, "You were right. It's all falling apart." She sat beside him, not saying anything at first. Just being there. Sometimes silence was the kindest language. Finally, she spoke. "You're still here, Ethan. That means you can still change the story." He turned to her slowly. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes, only confusion and something close to vulnerability. "Why are you still here, Grace? After everything I've done?" She smiled faintly. "Because walking away from people when they're broken isn't love. It's easy to love someone when they're strong, the hard part is loving them when they're not." Her voice trembled slightly on the last word. Ethan felt something in his chest shift, like a door unlocking after years of being shut. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, he stood by the window, watching her reflection in the glass. He realized he didn't deserve her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But for the first time, he wanted to. He wanted to be the kind of man Grace thought he could be, not the one who played with love for sport, but the one who finally understood it. And though he didn't know it yet, that quiet desire, that fragile spark of remorse, would change everything that came next. The morning light was soft, almost too gentle for a day destined to break hearts. Grace hummed as she arranged fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. For the first time in weeks, the house felt alive again. Ethan had changed. He was still quiet, but something in his eyes was different, softer, uncertain. He had started spending time with her, helping in small ways, washing dishes, joining her at the shelter, even baking once, badly. Grace told herself people could change. That maybe, beneath the arrogance, there had always been goodness waiting to grow. She believed it because she needed to. That afternoon, Ethan left for a board meeting. Grace decided to surprise him. She planned to bring lunch to his office. She packed his favorite sandwich, the one he'd always said reminded him of home. When she arrived, the receptionist smiled awkwardly. "Mr. Cole's in a meeting, ma'am. But you can wait inside his office if you'd like." Grace nodded, stepping inside the sleek glass room that smelled faintly of his cologne and success. She placed the lunch on his desk, her eyes wandering over framed awards, photos from company galas, and one picture she'd never noticed before: Ethan, Marcus, and Logan laughing on a rooftop, champagne in hand. The same rooftop from that night, the night everything began. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Ethan's tablet, left unlocked, flashed with a new message. She didn't mean to look. But her eyes caught a familiar name. "Marcus. Can't believe you're still with her. The bet should have ended months ago. What's the delay?" Grace froze. A sick, twisting feeling rose in her stomach. She tapped the screen with trembling fingers. A scroll of messages appeared, each one cutting deeper than the last. "Marcus. Man, 6 months was generous. You're a saint for lasting this long." Ethan, weeks ago. "It's complicated. She's not what I expected." Marcus. "Don't tell me you're catching feelings for your charity case." Ethan. "No. I'm just trying to do this right. I'll end it soon." Grace's breath hitched. The room began to spin. A bet. A cruel, meaningless game. Her knees weakened. The walls of glass suddenly felt like they were closing in, transparent, merciless. She backed away, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Her hands shook as she closed the tablet and stared at the lunch she'd brought, the sandwich neatly wrapped, a note tucked inside that read, "You're doing great. I'm proud of you." Her throat tightened. The words mocked her now. Without thinking, she grabbed her purse and walked out. That evening, Ethan returned home, humming softly, a rare sound these days. He'd planned to tell Grace something important. He'd decided to confess everything. The truth, the bet, the guilt. He wanted to end the lie himself. But when he entered the house, the lights were off. The scent of her perfume lingered faintly in the air, mixed with something emptier, absence. On the table lay an envelope. His name written in her careful handwriting. He sat down, heart already sinking, and unfolded the letter. "Ethan. When I met you, I believed in the goodness I saw in people, even those who had forgotten how to be kind. I told myself you were just lost. That love could find its way into even the hardest heart. I was wrong, not about love, but about you. You didn't marry me because you loved me. You married me because I was convenient, because I fit into a cruel joke that made you feel powerful. But here's what you didn't expect. I loved you anyway. And maybe that's my mistake, believing that love could heal someone who never wanted to be healed. I'm not angry, Ethan. I'm just free. You taught me what love isn't. And I hope, one day, you learn what it is. Grace. The letter slipped from his hands. He pressed his palms to his face, a sound escaping his throat, half sob, half breath. He'd thought he understood loss before. But this was emptiness. He rushed through the house calling her name, hoping she'd still be there. Her clothes were gone. Her phone, silent. Her ring, placed gently on the bedside table. He sank to the floor beside it, staring at the simple band that once symbolized everything she'd believed in. Outside, thunder rolled softly, like the world mourning with him. That night, for the first time in his life, Ethan Cole cried. Not for his company, not for his pride, not for losing a bet. But for losing the only person who had ever loved him without wanting anything in return. He realized something cruel and irreversible. He had won the bet, but lost the prize. The woman he had mocked had given him real love. And now, she was gone, leaving him alone with the one person he'd spent his life running from. Himself. He walked to the fireplace, picked up the original bet contract from his drawer, the one signed that night with laughter and arrogance, and watched it burn to ash. As the paper curled and blackened, Ethan whispered through clenched teeth. You win, Marcus. But I've never lost more in my life. The fire glowed in his eyes, not fury this time, but grief, raw and human. The man who thought he could buy love had finally learned its price. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Cole fell silent, truly, painfully silent. It had been 3 months since Grace left. 3 months since the silence in the penthouse stopped feeling temporary and started feeling permanent. Ethan Cole used to measure time by profit margins and market trends. Now, he measured it by the sound of loneliness, the echo of footsteps that no longer answered, the untouched coffee cup on the counter every morning, the ring he kept hidden in his drawer but couldn't bring himself to throw away. The city below carried on without him, glittering, indifferent. He watched it from his window every night, wondering when he had become so small in a world he once thought he owned. The fall of Coltech had been swift and merciless. The data breach exposed more than just information, it revealed corruption, shortcuts, arrogance. Board members resigned. Partners withdrew. Marcus disappeared completely. The press branded him a fraud. He had gone from the visionary CEO to the man who lost it all. For the first time, Ethan didn't fight it. He let the empire